Hello, YouTube world. Thank you for watching. It's, as always, Gordon Causey, minus Candy the Wonder Pup. I gave my dog her treat before the video, so we don't have to play those little games. Ahead of time, my apologies for those of you who like seeing Candy, but want to get right into it. Talking about what's happening today. It is right now just after midnight on Wednesday, the 20th of September, 2023. And for Canadians, this is a date when what I consider a rather significant event is planned. They're calling it the Million March for Kids, or Million March for Children. And what's happening tomorrow in cities all across Canada, in my home province of Ontario. Events are planned in Ottawa, in Toronto, in Hamilton, in Sudbury, and cities large and small. And this is right across Canada. A march to a message to the educational system to take the gender politics that is permeating our world right now and to remove it from the schools, because kids have enough things to deal with in today's world, and gender ideology shouldn't be one of them. And so Canadians who share that view are going to be protesting, marching in, again, cities all across Canada. It hasn't gotten a lot of play. It didn't get a lot of talk outside of online. The mainstream pretty much ignored it until very recently. And what's happened is a number of the labor unions, such as QP and others, Canadian Union of Public Employees and other unions, have announced counter protests. And that has me fearful. That has me fearful of violence and confrontation. Confrontation, certainly. And confrontation can always escalate into violence. I saw a video of in Ontario. I forget exactly what city it was. I don't think it was big. I think it was small town Ontario, where one of these drag queen story hours was taking place, and there was a lone individual who had a sign up. I don't know what their sign said. Might have said something like two genders, or God created the male and female, quoting from Genesis. Whatever his sign said, he was exercising his right at free speech and standing peaceably outside of where this event was taking place. And there was a reporter trying to engage with this individual, talking to him, how do you handle, and while this reporter was trying to talk to this gentleman, there was another individual, a guy dressed up like a woman, who was screaming, F you, and just repeatedly, you. And this gentleman with the sign just stood there peacefully, trying to answer the reporter's questions. And then eventually this peaceful individual was physically assaulted. He was punched in the face. And at which point police who were present on the scene, finally they intervened. It was okay for them to verbally assault this individual. But once he was physically assaulted, then the police intervened. And that's my fear. In the radical extremist left and the degrees to which they will go, they often will use the term Antifa, meaning anti-fascist, but they employ fascist tactics. They employ fascist rhetoric. They basically try and stifle free speech, which is what fascism is all about. There's only one narrative, only one side, their side, that is allowed to have any sway, any place in the public discourse. And so they're so convinced they're right that they have almost a God-ordained right to shut anyone down who dares have the temerity to disagree with them. And so tomorrow, parents, promoters of this event, are urging parents to keep their kids home from school and then to take part in protests and marches. And once again, my prayer is that everything will remain peaceful. This protest, the organization of this protest, was spearheaded by members of the Muslim faith. Those who follow Islam were the organizers of this event. And but it doesn't matter when it comes to gender ideology. A lot of Muslims, a lot of Hindus, a lot of Sikhs, a lot of Christians are opposed to it. Children are not, obviously, sexual beings. We're talking prepubescence here. And this notion of telling children that they can choose their identity, their sexual identity, their gender identity, is, in my view, damaging to children. And this is nothing new. This whole idea of children suffering from gender confusion is nothing new. It's as old as history itself. Children sometimes think, well, I should have been born, a boy might think I should have been born a girl, or a girl might think she should have been born a boy. But the fabric of reality, their genetics, their anatomy, says something else. And it's only in recent years that we have decided to validate an idea that somehow an individual's feelings can supersede the objective physical, genetic, biological reality. And we now have, thanks to, I use the term advances, ironically, because I don't really consider it an advance, but thanks to increased knowledge of chemical reactions and such in the body, they now have pharmaceutical products called puberty blockers, which have proven to be dangerous. One of the known and documented side effects of puberty blockers is that they reduce bone density. So you're talking about children whose bodies are developing, and you're basically subjecting them to osteoporosis at a young age, a disease that's predominantly old women. You're going to give it to kids, and that's to say nothing of if a child goes further down that road, then we're talking about mutilating surgeries, mutilating healthy tissue. Pardon me, I'm suffering a bit of a dry mouth. Coffee's a diuretic, but whatever. Anyway, in my town, from what I'm aware, there isn't a march or a protest planned anywhere within 100 kilometers of me. So, and besides which, I'm working, so I won't be participating. But I do support the movement. Personally, I'm not big on protests because I don't like the dynamics of them. A lot of times it's individuals desperately seeking attention in some of the worst ways possible, screaming the loudest, trying to have the best slogan, the best sign. And it's just my makeup. But I do support, broadly speaking, I do support this wholeheartedly, this idea that gender identity politics has no place in our school system. And there are individuals on the pro-identity politics side who are big on pushing this notion that somehow, an individual's sex, their gender, is nothing more than a societal construct. They try to paint anyone who disagrees with them as being hateful and wanting to damage children. You have a child who is gender confused, and as I have said, this has existed throughout all of human history. Fred Rogers, who many will remember the Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood TV show that aired for 20 plus years, I believe. And Fred Rogers wrote a song about gender identity and saying only boys can be the daddies, only girls can be the mommies. Everybody's fancy, everybody's fine. Your body's fancy, and so is mine. You can check that out sometime if you like. He even sang it on Johnny Carson, for goodness sakes. One of the 2 or 3 times he was on the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson back in the day. This has existed for a long time. Kids sometimes think they were born in the wrong bodies. And I do think hate is never an answer to anything. If a child is suffering from gender confusion, bullying, or mocking, ridiculing, that's not healthy. That's not a positive thing. And that's something that would happen in years past. It certainly would have happened in my generation growing up. There's always been this overriding societal push toward conforming to the broader culture. And something I think we've learned over the last 30, 40 years is the need for compassion, kindness, and understanding, and how bullying is not acceptable. And that's great. But then to jump from that to affirming someone's delusional thinking rather than confronting it at its core and finding out why this child is gender confused. The head of the American Pediatrics, former head of the U.S. Pediatric Medicine, she talked about how she came across a patient in her practice where there was a young boy who had a sister who was special needs, and the girl received far more attention than the boy. And the boy, being only 3 or 4 years old, didn't understand that the reason his sister was getting so much more attention was because of her special needs. He, in his child mind, thought that the reason was because his mommy and daddy preferred girls to boys, and so he wanted to be a girl. And in today's culture, someone suffering from that kind of disordered thinking would have it affirmed at school. And further, and this has come out big time, and this is a big point of contention, is that a child can tell their teachers, the educational system, that a boy can say, I want to be identified as a girl. And so you're dealing with someone who's suffering from gender confusion, who's suffering from a psychological disorder, and the parents aren't even informed of it. That's insane in my world. Now, is every parent kind, loving, and are all parents perfect? No, they're not. There's no such thing as a perfect parent. Well, for me, there is one, God. But in terms of this terrestrial plane, no, in our world today. But parents overwhelmingly love and cherish their children, and they want what is absolutely best for them. And that's parental rights are parental rights. And it's a complex issue. And I think there are a lot of individuals who tap out of things and they say, well, it's too complex. I don't have the requisite knowledge, education, or background, so I'll just go with the flow. I'll just go along with whatever is predominating. And the purveyors of this ideology are able to, in the online world, in the digital world, they are able to create this illusion that there's widespread acceptance. And we see someone like this Dylan McIlvaney guy, the one they put, the guy who likes to dress up, who was put on the Bud Light beer cans. And reality shows up when Bud Light's sales fall into the toilet, and companies like Costco stop stocking that beer because no one's buying it. Same thing happened to Target when they came out with a transgender line of clothing. People started to stay away from Target. So the real world and this digital illusionary world that they try to present as reality, when the two hit, reality wins. And the reality of the matter is, even a poll just came out recently, I forget the polling organization, but it was reported in CTV, mainstream media. Most Canadians are opposed. A majority of Canadians are opposed. A certain number, it's over 50% are opposed. There's a percentage that are neither here nor there, or have the typical have no opinion on the matter, and then a small percentage who support it. Most Canadians are opposed to this, and I think it will go up exponentially more if those of us who recognize it for what it is, because what it is, it's a divide and conquer strategy at the end of the day. George Carlin spoke about this brilliantly in many of his comedy routines, about how anything they can do to divide us, gender, race, religion, sexual orientation, anything they can do to divide the population and keep us fighting amongst ourselves so that they can keep going to the bank. And I mean, I'm wearing a t-shirt right now, Enough is Enough, and it says open up small businesses now. I'm reading it backwards. Open up small business now. During the COVID era, there was another divider. We were divided into essential and non-essential. Told that, there's a deadly virus out there. It's going to kill everybody, so you got to stay home. But not you essential people. You essential people can go and risk your lives. You're working in the supply chain or working in essential retail outlets, law enforcement. You essential people can go work, but you non-essential people stay home. That should have been a flag for anyone that something didn't smell right with COVID and the measures that were brought in to confront it. And now, so we had that division between essential and non-essential. People out supposedly risking their lives. I was one of them. I never felt like I was risking my life. Back then, when COVID started, I was still in the military, and so-called, I was no more or no less essential than any other person. It really bothered me, this labeling of people. That word essential really bugged me. Everyone is essential. And a child suffering from gender confusion is essential. And they need to be dealt with love and compassion and understanding. And they need help. Because, I said it jokingly. I did a video a month or more ago, saying, I want to identify as 7 foot tall. The reality is I'm 5'11". That's reality. The reality is I'm a man. That's reality. The reality is I'm bald. That's reality. And can I pretend that reality doesn't exist? Can I pretend that I'm 7 foot tall? Can I get dressed up and pretend that I'm a woman? I can put on a toupee and pretend that I'm not bald. It doesn't change reality. And like I said, it's existed forever. We had I think it was J. Edgar Hoover. I think he was the head of the FBI, who was a closet transvestite, apparently. It's widely reported that he enjoyed dressing up in women's clothing. Whatever. Everyone's got their little picadillos. And, just don't ask me to say he is a woman, because I know what a woman is. I know what a man is. And I know what intersex is. Intersex is a thing where someone's chromosomes, instead of being XX or XY, instead things get messed up. It's incredibly rare. I believe it's less than a tenth or less than 100th of a percent. It's an incredibly small percentage of the population. When we talk about this trans movement and everything, we're not talking about intersex individuals who have a genetic anomaly. We're talking about genetically normal guys who have an X and a Y who don't want to affirm reality, or they get mad if you don't affirm their conception of their own personal reality. But anyway, we'll see what happens tomorrow. Again, pray that it's peaceful. If you're taking part in these protests, my fear is that the pro gender identity politics crowd, that those who push this agenda, that they're going to be out in force, and they are going to be try and provoke. They're going to try and agitate. They're going to try and elicit the response. And the way our media, our lying, propagandizing media is, any port in a storm, they will look at what they did at the Ottawa convoy protest, referring to it as an illegal occupation of public ground, of public, taxpayer-funded grounds. All of a sudden, it was being illegally occupied. You can throw a rainbow flag and goodness knows what else onto the Terry Fox statue, and the mainstream media says nothing. But if you put a Canadian flag on it and you're a protester protesting against the government mandating what medical procedures are forcing medical procedures on people that they don't want, all of a sudden doing that to Terry Fox's statue, now they call it desecration. They're spin masters, they're spin doctors, they're propagandists. Unfortunately, there are still millions of Canadians who rely on the nightly news and believe that it's informing them. So we shall see what happens tomorrow. Be peaceful, be kind, be loving, but be resolute. You can be strong without being hateful. Leave that to the Antifa thugs and the far left extremist nut bars. We all know what they're like. Anyway, God bless, and we'll talk to you later.